The whole issue of work permits for high-skilled workers has come up big time the last week or so with Elon Musk and stuff getting involved. Well, what it highlights is when you compare the population of America and Ireland, it's 345 million people in America, and yet they just give out 65,000 work permits. Whereas in Ireland, with a population of in Ireland South, just over 5 million people, we have 40,000 work permits given out every year. And when you look at why are there hundreds of work permits for people making pizzas given out, is that a highly skilled job? I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. I think that we need to reassess, look at all the means. Irish Freedom Party from the very beginning has highlighted that our main problem of mass immigration into Ireland is not illegal immigration. It's not these people coming in without passports into Dublin Airport, even though it is a problem. But when you look at the base numbers, when you look at the PPS numbers every year, and you see like between 240,000, 300,000 new PPS numbers given out every year, and over 75% of them given to non-Irish nationals, you see really it's a numbers game, and the vast majority of people coming in because of EU open borders and also work permits and student visas. And I think it's madness. The number of people that have been allowed to come into Ireland in the last number of years, like it's a 1.5 million increase since 1995. Like in 1995 it was 3.5 million, now it's 5.3 million. That's a colossal increase. That's a 42% increase. Last 30 years, actually. So it's nuts. So India. So when we have a breakdown of the work permits given out in Ireland, and remember, these are supposed to be highly skilled work permits. They're clearly not. They're given out to people who can just make pizzas. That's not a high skill. That's not kind of software engineering, is it? Or brain surgery. But anyway, and remember that roughly half of the work permits given out every year, they can apply for family reunification right away, and half of them can apply for family reunification after 2 years. So the numbers that we're talking about is huge. But in Ireland, with a population just over 5 million, the government is giving out 40,000 work permits every year. All of that, 12,500 are given to Indians. Now let's look at the history of Indians around the globe. The population of India is huge. It's almost approaching that of a billion people. It's absolutely colossal. So if 0.5% or 1% of the population of India wanted to come to Ireland, we would be submerged physically immediately. Ireland would fit into like a tiny, tiny little corner. It would be a small part of one of their major cities. Look at the history of Indians across the globe. Look at Fiji. And Fiji is an example of the problem and a solution. Now, for over a century, Fiji was part of the British Empire. Many Indians traveled 11,000 miles from India to Fiji, and they worked in agriculture. And 60,000 Indians went to Fiji. They went there as temporary workers. They stayed. They worked on farms. They stayed. They didn't go back to India. They stayed in Fiji. They had children. They had a higher birth rate. They worked hard. They became commercially successful. So much so that by the 1960s and 70s, they changed from being a minority to being a majority. Their population of Indians was greater than that of the native Fijians. They had their own political parties, their own newspapers, etc. And of course, where the Fijians were Christian, the Indians were Hindu. And so there was always ethnic and religious tension between the two populations, and so much so that they had their own prime minister, voted in like they were able to economically and politically and demographically take over Fiji. And in the start, was it 1989, I believe, and then 2007, basically, it was put to an end with a coup by the Fijian army, where they said that they were trying to change the laws, and it was against the constitution. So the army stepped in and told them no, they couldn't allow that Fijian land and the seas, etc., could be bought up by Indians. And there was laws introduced which made it more difficult economically for the Indians, and many of the Indians returned home, well, what you would call remigration, that many, economically, the Indians were encouraged to return home, and now the Fijian people have returned to being a majority in their own country once again. It shows you how quickly a country can be taken over and how a native population can be replaced. Another example of what the Indians are capable of is Antwerp here in Belgium is famous for hundreds of years for being the global centre of the diamond trade. It was traditionally run by Hasidic Orthodox Jews. But in the 1960s, Indians came and they started working with the lowest grade, rough diamonds. They would buy them here in Antwerp. They would send them then back to India, where they would be cut and polished. They got in at the lowest level of diamond work, but they started making smaller profits. They accumulated by increasing the volume, up until now that they've been able to, that 3/4 of the diamond industry in Antwerp is now controlled by Indians. So it's because they work very hard, long hours, for small profit margins, more than their competitors, and basically they were able to replace or displace the Orthodox Jews out of the Antwerp diamond manufacturing process. A third example is that of the motel industry in America. The Motels from India went from Uganda. They were kicked out of Uganda because, once again, they were economically taking over. They had taken over the commercial workings of Uganda. They were kicked out of the East African country under Idi Amin. Many of them then went to America, where they started buying up motels in rural areas. They have since, because once again, the Indians were willing to work long hours with little profit margin, and they kept on accumulating and bringing in their family, their cousins, etc. They would help each other, and that's how, at the moment, once again, they have, it is estimated, they themselves would boast that they have 80% of the small hotels and all the motels in America in general, that they would have over 70 to 75% of the motel ownership in the United States, which is quite immense. So it shows that, you know what, so we can see back to Ireland that if we were taking in 40,000 people a year for work permits, 12,500 Indians, that family reunification is allowed. And once again, they do as they do in America. They come in, they buy shops, they get their cousins in, they get their family in. It will basically mean, and I've got nothing personally against Indians, unlike Muslims, for example, they don't pose a security threat. They don't go around killing people. They're normally strong families, emphasis on education, the peaceful people, hardworking. That's all good. But the thing is, it will still mean the replacement and the displacement of Irish people from economic opportunities, from ownership of houses, from ownership of land. And you got to say ultimately that this is Ireland. Ireland belongs to the Irish people, and it wasn't to be bought up and to be sold to Indians, Brazilians, Pakistanis. The Irish Freedom Party solution is that we need high-skilled workers. If we cannot produce the high-skilled labour that we need, or very high-skilled graduates, yes, perhaps we can take in the number that Ireland needs. It's good for the Irish economy. However, that these work permits should be tied to a residence permit, which is temporary for either 5 or 10 years max. And after that, it must be made clear that they're here only on a temporary basis, and after their work permit expires, they must return home, or they must leave Ireland and take the money and experience that they've got in Ireland and perhaps either go back to India or go on to another country, and we wish them all the best. But we must emphasise that the work permit, I don't see that we need the high number of work permits that are given out in Ireland at the minute. They're certainly not they're not all for highly skilled graduates. And two, that the work permits should be for only on a temporary basis, and the residence visa is linked to the work permit, which should expire after either 5 or 10 years max. Another problem is that this whole thing of family reunification. we're happy to take in the workers. They come here, they work, they understand, but hey, this is not for bring in the family and take over. There was a famous TD, Bamji, down in Clare in the 1990s, and his maxim was, you've had the Cowboys, now vote for the Indian. Well, we don't want Ireland to turn into a country of cowboys and Indians, and Irish cowboys, political, like where Irish gombeans profiteering from houses and hotels for direct provision centres, and then Indians displacing Irish people from Irish houses, Irish jobs, jobs in Ireland, houses in Ireland. During the European election, I was canvassing with Amanda Gallagher. It was in the shadow of Ben Bulben down in that valley, and we were up in a very, very nice and middle-class housing estate with a great view of Ben Bulben. And I remember going in the last house at the very top of the hill. I knocked on the door, and it was Indians in the house. Now, Indian female graduates are the highest paid strata in Irish society at the minute. And if we continue the road that the government is walking at the minute, it is very likely that we will find ourselves either like the motel industry in America, the diamond industry in Antwerp, how the Indians almost demographically and politically took over the country of Fiji. And even actually the Sikhs from Punjab in India at the minute do over 60% of the milk production for Parmesan cheese in Italy at the minute, in northern Italy. So we've got to make the choice for Ireland and give priority to Irish people in Ireland, that this is our land, it belongs to the Irish people, and we're not some economic hostel for the rest of the world. So our policy is to put Irish people first in Ireland, and if we need high education graduates, we take them in only as many as we need, as suits Ireland, as suits the housing policy, which gives priority to Irish people, and that the work permits should be on a temporary basis only, which comes to an end, and the residence expires after 5 or 10 years. They go on home, they go on to another country, and the family reunification should not be abused at the minute as it has been at the minute. So that's over and out from myself. I would ask you to like this video, share it with your friends, discuss the matter, which is very important. And I would ask you to either join the Irish Freedom Party, like and subscribe to the video, and consider joining the Irish Freedom Party and telling your family and friends about it, because we will be running in the next general election, European and local elections, and we ask for your support. Gora Margaretsa, Slán is Panic.